I don't know about you, Walker, but personally, I don't think colonialism has ever looked so good.
It's got an Eastern touch to it this time.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to mention right off the bat is board gaming is kind of having a long overdue reckoning with colonialism. And to a large extent, this hasn't touched a lot of people, but there are a lot of people at the vanguard who are having discussions. The re-edition of Puerto Rico with a less colonialist theme, people moving away from the traditional glory of the Western Europeans subjugating vast swaths of people. Stroganov isn't that. Stroganov is instead about the colonialist expansion of the Russian Tsarist Empire into Siberia. And instead of representing any of the terrible atrocities and ethnic cleansing that happened therein, instead it's this utterly gorgeous set of pastoral scenes that quite frankly make everything look so incredibly pleasant and civilized.
It's true. It does. I'm not saying it's exactly like Scythe, but it has the reminiscent of Scythe, sort of like the slightly out of focus, slightly pastel-y, slightly washed out look to it. And instead of, rampaging through the lands killing people, you're rampaging through the lands killing animals.
Yes. In the role that was actually outsourced by the Tsarist Empire, you play Cossacks murdering vast swaths of bunnies, of mink, of deer, the occasional bear, a tiger if you're real lucky.
If you're lucky. So that's what you're mainly doing. You have actions, and it's going to be moving your Cossack across the land, and for multiple reasons, right? And you sometimes have to think of why you want to do that, right? Because the more choice of furs will be further on because no one's got to it yet, but the emptier plots of land that you can take over will be closer. So it's this very interesting decision space. Do I rocket ahead so I can be closer in game turn and be alone up there and get what I want and get my outposts out there, because you can put out outposts which let you do actions out there without actually being there. So lots of cool things to decide with just that one small part of the game.
And to say nothing of turn order. And so you already have a very spatially located action selection game. The actual action selection is relatively straightforward and unengaging in and of itself. But when you layer it on top of the spatial element and the way the actions depend on where you are geographically in Siberia, that's the primary engagement as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and there are other sort of controls are that each sort of area wants a certain type of good. And it stays the same, but they're all different. So you can sort of stock up on a certain thing and then go out to that countryside that wants that type of fur and sort of monopolize on that. And I do want to get back to why another major reason why Stroganov is awesome, because it's so easy to learn and to teach. As long as you know that the majority of the rulebook is right on the board and the iconography is great. It's one of those games that you only have to play a couple times and you won't have to ever bring the rulebook out again. You'll just set it up and the whole turn order, the whole scoring, end of round, everything is right on the board. It's very well done, easy to follow, easy to teach.
I almost never make this recommendation when learning this game for the first time. Spread the board out while you're reading the rulebook, because otherwise you're not going to realize how little you have to remember going into it.
Yeah, because there's two types of actions, basic actions and advanced actions, and the board is covered with either silver rings or gold rings to depict those two different kinds of actions, so you know exactly what the actions are and what type of action it is.
Like a lot of modern traditional Euros, there's a lot of different ways to score points. There are these Favor of the Tsar cards, most of which give you special powers, some of which are just endgame scoring. There are a whole bunch of one-time effects that give you points. A lot of your points are going to come from buying these landscape tiles, which in turn is influenced by the economy of hunting, and so there's a great interplay there, especially in terms of not wanting to give your opponents good deals, / snapping up the deals that your opponents have left for you. Honestly, the trade-offs involved are some of the standard ones you're going to find in other Euro games, but I think that Stroganov does it with this level of spatiality, with this level of ease of reference on the board, and with such a visual appeal that I think it stands a couple of steps ahead of a lot of its competition.
True, and there's an advanced mode as well, so you have async boards that everyone's going to have their own special thing.
Mild differences,
which has a trophy track, which you're going to go down, which gives even more scoring and more advantages. It's very much an action efficiency game. It's how you're going to combo off, do this to get this fur, which will allow you to spend that fur to do this action, which will get you more resources or horses. There's a whole horse economy that lets you go flying out into the wilderness, or will help you get different furs that helps you skip down the track.
The horses help you on the track?
The horses help you at the track. Just you got to, bet just
Do you
right.
get it?
I get it.
It's important to me that you get it, Walker.
I get it. Track, you bet. Yes.
I'm glad you get it.
Daddy, why'd you spend all my money?
So, Walker, just out of apropos of very little, what was your suggested retheme of Stroganov?
It's a Pokemon theme. If you ever play Stroganov, I think it'll come to you immediately. The furs could be all the different Pokemon you're trying to catch. The different sections of the board can be all the different gyms, all the different places that you can visit will be the different, fights that you'll do at those gyms.
Coins are obviously Pokeballs, but what are the horses?
Poke food?
Yeah, nice try. Don't mess with the...
I need to know a lot more about Pokemon to do this, Mark.
Don't mess with the former official Pokemon Master of Canada. So, this is a rather pointed question, but it's nonetheless one that I'm very curious about. I don't know the answer to this. So, this was designed by Andreas Steding. Andreas Steding is the designer of, I think, one of the best Euro games of the past 20 years, Hansa Teutonica. And he's also designed Gugong, which is a slightly more recent release from Game Brewer as well, who also published Stroganov. And he's also done some other things I quite like, the Stouffer Dynasty, for example. Where would you rank Stroganov in terms of Andreas Steding's output?
I think fairly high. I think it's the second one in my...
Oh, you prefer it to Gugong?
Yes.
I anticipated the opposite. I thought you would have preferred Gugong to Stroganov. I'm with you. I think it's my second favorite design of his after Hansa Teutonica. Yeah, but most things lose to Hansa Teutonica.
True. I think it's just the ease of teach and the quickness of play once you get into it. I just enjoy it that much more.
Sure. Gugong has going for it at least a relatively clever action selection, which is something I normally like. But Gugong feels a little bit more scattered, a little bit more difficult to teach, a little less coherent in terms of its scoring, in terms of the objectives you're pursuing. And those are very personal touchstones that I look for in medium-weight Euro games. And so Stroganov seems more tailored to my preferences.
We didn't even talk about the singing. You sing of your great heroic deeds. It's another great mechanism.
Well, other people sing about them.
It's true.
Yeah. You show up with a bear pelt and you say, write me a song about how I done killed this bear, and they're like, okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's got a beat and you can dance to it. One comment, though, about Game Brewer, going back to the publisher, this was another instance of if you backed it on Kickstarter, you probably made a mistake. It got in retail distribution a long time before.
They did, and there was other things with the deluxe edition, with the quality of the components, which they rectified. They had another, in the very next project, you could, put it in your tier where you'd get replacement parts, but you still had to get in on that project.
And I mention this only as half a criticism because the base game, the non-deluxe version, is really visually appealing and with very functional components. So this is one of those things where you missed absolutely nothing by not backing it on Kickstarter.
Sure, the board is slightly thin, but other than that, I think it looks fantastic.
So that's Stroganov by Andreas Steding, published by Game Brewer. Highly recommended.
Check it out.